Hi everybody, it's Marcus Collins with MA Properties for the Lexington market update for March 2023. We've only had a couple of months, but I think we can begin to see a little bit about what's happening with the market. So with that, let's get started, shall we? So, relatively easy to get information today, much harder to make sense of it. The press is full of widely differing opinions about interest rates and what's the Fed going to do, what the impact on the housing market's going to be, and so on. So far more difficult to make, take advantage of that information just because it's so varied. So real estate is local, and guess what? We're going to focus exclusively on the Lexington market and give you a sense of what's happening within our local market. And then, if we do our job correctly, you will be able to take advantage of the information we're going to show you. So, I'm going to show you a lot of information this evening, but where can you get more information? So, good place to start is the maproperties.com website. There's lots of information on that. Scroll down to the statistics tab, real estate statistics. There's lots of information. You'll see a screen similar to what you see right now here. There's about 15 different metrics you can have a look at for about 50 different towns. So if you're living in Lexington but want to think about moving, you're thinking of moving somewhere else, or you're living somewhere else and thinking about moving into Lexington, chances are we have the information for the surrounding towns. We'll probably have the information that you need. So lots of information there. If you need anything else, if you don't understand what you're seeing there, just reach out to us. Trust me, we love talking about this. We'll be more than welcome to give you a walkthrough of the information that's there. So what should we talk about this evening? So first thing, I thought it would be useful to give you an overview of what happened in 2022. We're only in March, and so what happened, and certainly in the second half of 2022, is relevant to what we see in the market today. So that's the first thing we'll do. We'll then take a look at the single family market. I'm not looking at the condominium market this month. There just aren't enough sales. So kind of left that for following months. So we'll just focus on the single family market. We'll then take a look at a couple of recent listings we did, because there's some information in there that's worth looking, that's worth kind of exploring a little bit. So we'll look at those, and then we'll do some analysis of what's happening in terms of the bigger picture, and then a little bit of where we think 2023 is heading and how you should approach 2023. So what happened in 2022? So we're characterizing it really as the year of two halves. And the real change in that, of course, is mortgage interest rates. So this graph shows us the mortgage interest rates. This graph shows you the mortgage interest rates. Blue is the current. The green is the projection for the rest of this year. We'll see how accurate that is. It does seem to be declining, as you can see. Time will tell the degree of accuracy in that. I saw some numbers the other day. This is the Mortgage Banker Association forecast. They are actually the lowest forecast of Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac and so on. So it may well be that these numbers are slightly lower than what pans out. But we'll see. We'll know by the end of this month, how Q1's playing out anyway. But, excuse me, back to 2022. So as you can see there, as you went through Q1 to Q2, Q3, and Q4 in 2022, so you can see those interest rates rising somewhat, well, dramatically is the only word I think to describe it. They almost doubled. And what that, of course, means is that it has a dramatic impact on buyers' repayment costs. Add to that high prices, certainly in Lexington, and high price appreciation we have seen over the last few years. And lo and behold, they kind of double down. And that's why we did see the slowing down in the market in the second half of 2022. Home sales. So we did see less listings in Lexington in 2022 because the effects of COVID were unwinding and just about unwound, actually. So now we're back to the normal demographic changes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But home sales fell further than the number of listings fell, as buyers became much more price conscious. And so, as you can see here, quite a dramatic reduction in the number of home sales in the town. Blue is existing homes, The green is new construction, and that kind of orange color is the off-market teardowns. So we did see a somewhat dramatic reduction in the number of home sales in 2022, getting back to where we were in 2017 and 2018. So what about prices? Well, what I've done with prices here, I've taken 2022 and I've divided it into first half, second half. And you can see we did see a slight increase in prices in the first half of the year. Buyer confidence, before the interest rates the rise began to bite, if you like. But as we got into the second half of the year, prices were about the same as they were in 2021. So, we went back really to where we were in 2021 in terms of the average sale price. The last piece of information I thought would be useful to show for 2022 is the sell price to list price ratio. This ratio is a great metric to give us a sense of what buyer confidence is, how confident a buyer is. What it means is if a home is listed for $1 million and it sells for $1 million, that's 100% sell price to list price ratio. Now, what you can see in the graph here is 2022 broken down by month, and specifically broken down by the time a property went under agreement. Because even though we know what a home sells for when it closes, the price is actually agreed at the under agreement date. So what I've done here is I've backed out that 6 weeks to get us a better sense of when the mortgage interest rates began to bite in terms of people who were writing offers and having accepted offers on a home. And as you can see, in that first quarter, perhaps the first 4 months of 2022, so we got up to that kind of 114 level, which is very high. That's high for Lexington. Lexington doesn't ordinarily see an average anywhere near that. But then, as interest rates began to, or the rise in interest rates began to bite, so that ratio declined, and it just declined all the way through the year until at the end of the year we were at 99, 98, and 97. So it dropped off quite dramatically towards the end of the year. So that's why we're calling it really the year of two halves. First half of the year was quite buoyant. The second half of the year, definitely not the case. It really was a somewhat slower market, that's for sure. So there's a lot of information. That was 4 graphs, but there's a lot more information about what happened in the market, and you can find that in the Lexington Market Review. We produce this on a yearly basis. If you live in Lexington, you may well have received this in the mail. Lots of information about what's happening in the market. It's also on our website, maproperties.com, and if you would like a print copy, just reach out to us. We'd be more than willing to send it out to you. So if you want to know the details, we look at single family, condominium, the luxury market, and we also look at new construction. So lots of information in there, as well as a big section on what we see as our predictions for 2023. So that's all in the market review. So let's take a look at what's happened here in the first 2 months of 2023, single family home market. So first thing to look at is cumulative sales. Cumulative sales are actually lower than they were in 2022. Now that's a little surprising. I don't want to read too much into this, but it's a little surprising because we've seen a rather mild winter this year. Normally, a mild winter means more buyers are out, and so homes begin to sell. And so that's why it is a little surprising, given how mild the winter's been so far anyway, fingers crossed it continues, of course, why we're actually lower in 2023 than we were in 2022. Not by very many, it's only about 10 houses, but we'll certainly be keeping an eye on this metric as the year unfolds to see if it's actually going to continue. And we will see less sales in 2023 than 2022, which, if you remember what I just said, 2022 was actually much, much lower than we saw in the COVID years. So, sale price to list price ratio, worth looking at it. As you can see, we've got December, we've got a little bit of January data, not very much. Shouldn't read too much into this because there is that 6 to 8 week delay between a home going under agreement and selling, and that's when I know the price basically. So it certainly does look like it's edging slightly down from where it was actually in October, November, December of 2022. But let's give it another month or so to see quite where that finishes up as we get more information, so that kind of data becomes more accurate, if you like. In terms of average prices, we're a little bit higher. Always cautious given that we've only had 2 months worth of data here, but we do look to be a little bit higher in terms of the average sell price. But there's a little bit more to that, because if we look at the median, we see that the median is actually quite dramatically higher than it was in 2022. But there's kind of a but here. What's happening here, and if you read the market review, I didn't talk about it in the overview, it's kind of a little bit too much detail, but we had an awful lot of expensive, in many cases, new construction homes that were lingering on the market. They just weren't selling. There were essentially too many luxury homes, and we define luxury homes as over 2.5 million, than the market could absorb. So we had an awful lot, and we still do have an awful lot, which are actually on the market. And it's interesting to look at the homes that sold in January and February to see quite where that sale price to list price ratio ended up. It turns out that for new construction, that ratio was at 88%. For over 1.5 million, it was at 89%. And for all price points, it was at 95%. That's a very low number. On average, before COVID, Lexington was around about 100%. To see numbers in the 80s is very, very low. That's a very low ratio. We've not seen that, until the downturn back in 2007, 2008. So definitely going to be keeping a close eye on this to see exactly what's happening in terms of, certainly in terms of those luxury homes. Are they selling? Are developers finding they're having to reduce prices, which clearly is what you're seeing here in the information. So there's a lot going to unfold in the next few months, 2 to 3 months, I think, in terms of that average sale price and, of course, the sale price to list price ratio. I mentioned there's a large number of expensive homes on the market. This is the number of homes, current homes, as of 1st of March. How many homes were on the market? Interesting, we've got 5 between 2 and 2.5, 8 between 2.5 and 3, and 13 between 3 and 5 million. So the majority of homes that are sat on the market are the very expensive homes, the luxury homes. A large proportion of those are new construction too. So it may well be that new construction begins to bring that ratio down, just because developers are forced to sell because they too are impacted by the mortgage interest rates. Their financing costs are in fact much higher than the mortgage interest rates. And so that's beginning to have a kind of downward effect on the price of new construction. So keeping a close eye on this as it kind of unfolds over the next couple of months. So a lot more information in the market review in terms of what's happening with that luxury and the new construction home market. I thought it might be useful to take a quick look at what's happening in terms of recent listings, in terms of a couple of kind of anecdotes of this. First one, a home we listed at 1.8 million. We had 150 private showings, and I remember I said, as we get mild winters, so that brings the buyers out. Sellers less so, but certainly the buyers are out. Say 150 private showings are on this home, and 8 offers, and it sold for over asking, and it sold with no contingencies. So that's kind of not quite getting back to the market conditions we saw in 2022, but certainly, a buoyant home. What I would say about this home, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, it's move-in ready. It's been prepared beautifully, staged beautifully, and that's what brings the buyers out. That's for sure. Another one we listed for a 1.15, slightly lower price point. Interestingly, less private showings for that home, which is interesting, and less offers, as it turns out. And actually, the highest offer that the seller got was actually from a builder, which surprised us, I have to say, given the state of the new construction market here in Lexington. We were surprised to see a builder putting that highest offer in. I would say it wasn't a builder we've heard of before. It was not a Lexington builder, so that was that reassured us that the well-known Lexington builders are not outbidding the buyers. But interestingly, the seller decided that they were going to select a slightly lower offer because they didn't want the home to be a teardown. So in this case, it could have been a teardown, but the seller decided no, they actually wanted the home to actually remain as a home, and they had that choice, which was an interesting point as you're thinking about is my home a teardown. Actually, bringing it on the market, you get a choice. So, do you want to sell to a developer, or do you actually want to sell to a home buyer and have that home remain a home? So, a little bit of a mixed bag there. 150 private showings for a 1.8, 100 for a 1.1. Number of offers in the single digits. That seems like a lot, but we did have the situation beginning of last year where double-digit offers was the norm. And so definitely a slowing down when we compare the market to what we saw in early 2022. That's for sure. So what's going on in kind of the wider perspective? You will have seen, if you've listened to a presentation of ours before, this graph or this slide before, really this was COVID. But what's happened now, and we saw this in terms of the number of home sales and the number of home listings in Lexington in 2022, this has come to an end. COVID, at least the impact of COVID on the housing market, has just about unwound. There is nothing much left in terms of the impact of COVID. And so we're back to, unsurprisingly, the normal driver for the market, which is demographics. Downsizers become sellers, downsizers become sellers, or downsizers are sellers, excuse me. And then, first-time home buyers moving into, for example, Arlington, a little bit in Lexington. Its price point isn't quite right for first-time home buyers, but it is possible. But moving into, say, an Arlington, allowing people in Arlington to move into Lexington, kind of move up buyers, if you like. So really, we're back to what we were talking about in 2017, 2018, as it turns out, that the market is very much being driven by downsizers and then home buyers wanting to jump on the housing ladder, allowing home sellers to become move-up buyers. We should talk about interest rates, of course. This graph takes us all the way back to 2000, and as you can see with that kind of orange bar, which is the 30-year fixed rate, we're at a level that we haven't seen since 2006, 2007, the crash, basically. But what's interesting, if you look closely at the last 3 months worth of data, interest rates beginning to tick up. Now, will that continue? Hard to say. It's certainly been ticking up for the last month, the last 4 weeks that we've been tracking it, it has been moving up. Again, back to the information coming out in the press about from what the Fed are going to do and so on. Difficult to make a judgment call here, I think. But what is clear is that interest rates are not dropping anywhere near as rapidly as they rose. And so they will drop undoubtedly as the year unfolds, but nowhere near as dramatic a drop as it was a dramatic rise. So much slower decrease than we saw the increase. I thought I would try this graph. I'm not sure how clear it is when I was kind of building it, but I thought it'd be useful to show you or give you a sense of offer distribution. Where are the offers, certainly in this time of year versus as the year progresses. So let me kind of try and explain what I'm trying to show here. The vertical bar is the number of offers, and then the horizontal bar is the offer price. And in general, as you look at a multiple offer situation, it's really a bell curve, just about. And so what you find is that certainly this time of year in general, because there are lots of buyers out, not that many listings, we do tend to find most of the offers are slightly higher than the list price, although not necessarily always the case, but realistically around about the list price. But inevitably, the successful offers are the ones that in some cases are a little bit of the outliers. And I put that in there because you need to be cautious as you get one or two anecdotal stories about homes that sold way over asking or for a very high price. It may well be that those buyers had a reason they wanted that home. Maybe their rental was coming to an end and they needed to move into a home. Maybe the area just worked for them. Maybe the house worked for them in terms of their situation. So it's often the case that some of those outliers push the house in many cases quite high. But be cautious, because the majority of offers are not the outliers. And once the outliers are bought, guess what? So that bell curve begins to narrow a little bit, and we just don't get those high numbers out at the extremities. And so be cautious when you do hear those anecdotal stories, because it may well be just one buyer bid the house higher. Most of the buyers are much closer to that list price because that's where they see value and that's what they can afford given the high interest rate. So that was why I wanted to show this graph. Hopefully that made sense. Somebody I'm sure will point out whether it did or it didn't, but hopefully that kind of made sense in terms of the way the offers usually play out. So what do we see in terms of 2023? So it does seem like it is a seller's market, but certainly nowhere near as strong as we saw in early 2022. But time will tell whether it's a continuation of the second half of last year, or whether we are going to see a little bit of a stronger market than we saw. But what's absolutely clear if you're thinking about selling in this market, pricing is key. Overpricing has always been the Achilles heel of a home. A home that's overpriced inevitably sits on the market, inevitably gets less money at the end of the day than what it was actually worth. We've been preaching this for a long time. But it's even more important in this market where pricing and where buyers are more and more price conscious because they have to be, just because of mortgage interest rates. So that's key. Pricing is key. Move-in ready is key as well, because as mortgage interest rates are higher, so buyers have got less money, so they don't necessarily have the resources to be able to paint the house, refinish the floors. And so creating a product that is a move-in ready product is even more important than it's been in prior years, and certainly more important than it's been in 2022 and 2021. It's clearly much more important. You need to create a product that today's buyers walk in and go, yes, I don't have to do anything. I can move my suitcase in. I'm good. And the same really applies to creating a product in terms of both the staging of the home and the marketing of the home becomes even more important as we're in this mixed message market at best, perhaps even a continuation of the market we saw in 2022. So it's almost like reverting back to, basics, if you like. Make sure the pricing has to be right. Create a product that people want in terms of preparation, because they just don't have the funds, given the repayment cost, to be able to fix the home, to paint the home, and then create the product or market the product with staging and with marketing. That's what brings the buyers in, and that's what leads to multiple offers at the end of the day. So a little bit of a mixed picture, but I think it's clear that what I just talked about is really the way in which you do get yourself to top dollar in this, say, at best a mixed market, picture, perhaps even a continuation of what happened at the second half of 2022. So that's it. That's our March update. More information next month, of course, as the kind of spring market unfolds. So with that, I'll say thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We're more than willing to talk about this. We can talk a lot about this, as you can imagine. But if you have any questions and you'd like to, get some more information about what's going in, specifically perhaps in your town, if I haven't covered it here this evening, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it. Bye.